So questions from 717 from the last couple of weeks. I mentioned about Gideon and his really not so good son Abimelech, who goes through and kills all his brothers. Kind of a really heartbreaking scene in Israel's history. And there's several of them in all of our histories, really. America's got several heartbreaking scenes too. But it's one of those moments you just go, man, that didn't turn out well. And you almost get this sense that Gideon did not do a very good job of training up his sons for the next generation of leading. And so one of the questions, and I made the comment at that time, is that you can't come to me when your kid's in college or your kid's in 25 years old and an atheist and totally walked away from any sense of God, and you never had any investment of spiritual reality in their life or anything like that, and then come to me and go, fix my 25-year-old. And it's like, well, no, I can't fix them. And the person's question was, you're right to say that you can't fix any wayward. Can God fix them? The answer, of course, is yes. And we've seen situations of people who have completely not walking with the Lord, and God draws them back to himself. This last week, I was looking at someone's baptism testimony that they had done here at Matthew Road, and the video of that person's testimony is really a dramatic testimony about how God brought this person in their mid-20s, from a life of totally away from God and brought them into a right relationship with him, and did, in fact, bring this wayward person home. But I do think when a parent says, oh, let's get the preacher or the church to fix my child, it's a little frustrating when they bring a 25-year-old or bring the troubles of their 25-year-old to you and say, fix this child. It is a little frustrating. At that point, it's very hard to make an impact. The impact on the child is done from birth, and teaching them to be kind and good, to love God, to love others, to do good works, to care about the poor, to care about those who are in need. All of those things we try to instill in our kids. Even if you do that, you're not guaranteed perfect kids, but there's a lot better chance there than to completely ignore spiritual matters and good heart matters, and then suddenly when they're in their 20s wrecking their life, to suddenly desperately say, to try to get a preacher to fix them is just not going to work out very well. Next question, and this question comes up a lot: could Jesus have sinned? And the answer is the devil sure thought he could. When the devil tempts him, the devil comes at him as if that's a legitimate possibility. This is a hard question because we're told in Hebrews he was tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin, which implies also from the Hebrew writers thinking that he faced temptation the way we face temptation. I think the implication is he could have sinned. This is hard because if he's both God and man, the divine aspect, clearly if God is perfect and holy, that sin is impossible. But for someone who is a human, called a second Adam and Eve clearly had the ability to sin and did. So I think that this is a tough quandary. The Bible hints at the fact that he could have sinned and didn't. And I think that's really the reality, is that he was tempted as a human being to sin and felt the weight of that temptation, but never did. And so that's my answer to that, is that Hebrews says he was tempted in all ways as us, but did not sin, meant that he could have. And the fact that the devil came at him means the devil thought he could have, and the devil's a better theologian than me. So that being said, if he had sinned, clearly God knew in advance before sending his son that he wouldn't sin, or he wouldn't have sent him, and all those kinds of things. So clearly God knew, and his foreknowledge is that he would not sin, but I do think that the real temptation was there for him to sin, but he did not. All right, so next question is about the Nazirite vow. I got a couple of questions about this, about Nazirite vow. A couple of questions. First of all is, can anyone take a Nazirite vow? Is it only Jewish? And I think proselytes to Judaism, probably some of them did take Nazirite vows. I would not have been surprised by that at all. I suspect even Timothy, who was half Jewish, may have taken a Nazirite vow with Paul. There are other situations where individuals who came into Judaism who are not Jewish may have taken Nazirite vows. So, I think other non-Jewish people did, in fact, take the Nazirite vow. It was a time of just personal setting aside of spiritual disciplines, of prayer and spiritual focus. And so, there were probably some other people who took Nazirite vows other than Jewish. The other thing is, does this make them vegetarians since they couldn't touch anything dead? The not touching of things dead was about a carcass. Like, don't touch a human body that's dead. Don't touch a dead animal. This is about not doing anything unclean. You remember that even the Jewish individuals in the time of Christ would not touch a dead person or a dead carcass of an animal for fear they would be defiled for Passover, but then during Passover would eat the lamb. And you say, how is that possible? The answer is they could eat cooked food. That's not an unclean dead carcass. An unclean dead carcass would be to get a lamb that had been attacked by a wild animal and had died and bury that lamb or touch that dead carcass or something like that. That's an unclean thing. A cooked meat that's prepared and ready to eat is not unclean and don't touch a dead thing. That's a prepared food, and those are different. So Nazirites weren't vegetarians as far as I can tell, and in fact, I'm pretty sure they weren't. And anyway, so yeah, they weren't vegetarians. This is about touching dead carcasses, decaying carcasses. All right. The next thing is, so will the earth and these heavens be destroyed to prepare them for the ultimate godly reign of the new world? Yes, the answer is yes. According to Peter, it says that the elements will be destroyed with a rush of fire. You remember God promised to never destroy the earth again with a flood, but apparently the destruction at the end will come, and it will be almost a cleansing thing. Fire at times is a judgment thing, but it's also a cleansing thing. Remember 1 Corinthians 3 that we were told that God will judge our works as through fire, as a purifying thing, and that gold, precious stones, and metals will be preserved as through fire. They'll be purified. And so I think the heavens and the earth will be purified, completely burned up and reset by God in that regard. And so this is interesting to think through what that might look like, both from a physics standpoint or scientific standpoint, or what's meant by those things. And the answer is there's some mystery there to me. There may be for others as well. But just to say that it appears as though God will basically take the universe and just go collapse the whole thing and then relaunch it in new heavens and new earth. And I've wondered in heaven whether, the current observation is that the universe is ever expanding away. And I wonder in the new heavens and new earth whether the new heavens and the new earth will also be continuously, constantly, gloriously expanding forever and ever in every direction to display the infinite nature of God. And that in heaven or in eternity, whether we won't spend some of our time just exploring the nature of the beauty of God by looking at the new heavens and the new earth, and that observation of just the unbelievable beauty that's there. I've wondered about that, and that would be very intriguing to me. When we get to heaven, I guess we'll know those things. But yeah, I think at the end, God will take the entire universe, crush it in an instant, and fire as a purifying work, and relaunch it in a refined, beautiful, perfected universe without sin, without death, without tears, without the war and pestilence and famine we see today that human sin has brought upon this world. All right, those are great questions. We'll see you guys Sunday night at 7:17.
Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain you